In my experience, I know most teachers are going to play it small. Trust yourself, trust the yoga, trust what you're going to share. Don't get out of your own way. It's the out of the box things. You don't have to do a workshop in a yoga studio.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm sitting down with Brea to chit chat and reflect on her recent live workshop, all about how to plan, market, and actually fill your next yoga workshop without the overwhelm of imposter syndrome. So it was a 90-minute session packed with real world advice for yoga teachers looking to expand beyond weekly classes. And the best part is just the beginning. So Bree's gonna be hosting more of these free live workshops in the coming months. The next one is all about how to teach inclusive yoga classes. So if you're curious, I'm gonna drop the link in the description so you can register. I wanna just jump right in though, Bree. Let's start at the very beginning. I wanna know, how did it feel to teach this live workshop? Like, anything surprise you, and like, how was the experience of it?
Well, it's fun because it's been 2 decades of teaching, over 2 decades. And so like I've done a lot of workshops, and in a way, nothing actually was maybe what's more surprising is how little things have changed in terms of like the foundational things that yoga teachers, people who teach yoga, are nervous about, fearful about, not sure about. Honestly, that doesn't change. It's human. I love it. So yeah, I think no, and it was actually I had a ton of fun in this workshop. I felt I left it feeling very grateful to just do what I do actually. And it was like everywhere else. So what I also love doing any workshop, whether it's online or in person, is that feeling of like, oh, yay, we're all learning and laughing together.
When you started the workshop, I'm curious, like, what kind of teachers showed up, and were there any reoccurring themes or questions that really were brought to the table?
I think we had, from what I could tell, and as always with all of these things, very experienced teachers and also brand new teachers. So there were teachers who had never done a workshop before. There were teachers who had attended a million workshops, because that's very common, of course. Yoga teachers, we all love to learn. I really see this commonality of like, good teachers are the ones who are always like, okay, I'm going to do this training, I'm going to do this workshop. So a lot of that. And yeah, but a definitely mix of experiences. So I loved the curiosity that people brought to it, no matter what their experience was. And there wasn't necessarily one main question, because I think we did a pretty comprehensive coverage of the main points of what a workshop was. So by the time we got to questions towards the end, there weren't any wildly wild questions or anything like, surprisingly, yeah, there wasn't a ton of questions in a good way.
What do you think is the kind of biggest mental block for teachers that they face when they are planning their first workshop? Or, like you said, experienced teachers, so I'm guessing planning any workshop.
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome is the mental block. And it's pretty funny because I'm at this stage of teaching when I'm teaching teachers that literally almost no matter what the theme is, I think I always have to address the imposter syndrome because it's there in the room with us, whether we're acknowledging it or not. And definitely, like, so I have when I teach these workshops online, there's a slide deck and we go through that. And once we head towards the marketing thing. So went like the way the workshop was set up was we go through like how to do a workshop, how to create one, your theme, figuring it out, and then we go into marketing. But between those two sort of aspects of the workshop itself, then I'm like, and how about imposter syndrome? And then everybody kind of smiles and laughs and go, yeah, right. And we talk about our fears briefly, and we just put in the chats and the comments of like, well, what are your fears? And so a lot of the fears that come out, because I do that on purpose because it also helps to normalize. We all have our fears. We're all human beings. We all have our insecurities, especially as teachers, because you're putting yourself out there. And so the more that we can normalize and name and bring up the fears that are there in this lovely community setting, it makes a big difference. So some of the main fears were like, nobody's going to like the workshop. Nobody's going to come. Like, they're worried about nobody coming. They're worried about everybody thinking that they're an imposter or that they don't know enough. I think those are kind of the top ones of like, people aren't going to like it. Nobody's going to come. And I don't know what I'm doing. Feeling like I don't know that. Again, that imposter syndrome.
What's one thing you emphasized in that workshop that you wish someone had told you earlier on in your career?
I think number one, any sort of information about teaching a workshop. I had to figure that out myself. My teacher training didn't cover any of this. So how to do a workshop in the first place. And so definitely I learned from attending a lot of workshops and seeing what I liked and didn't like. And so I think it's really helpful to have sort of a blueprint and a template of all the ways that we can break down what makes a good workshop, what makes a not so good workshop. What theme do you choose? How to create the workshop? What do you even put into the workshop? How do you start it? How do you end it? How long should it be? How do you market it? How do you, like, all that stuff? In my experience, yeah, we haven't talked about it in a long ever in trainings very often, unless you do Heart Bones online teacher training. Of course we talk about this. But otherwise, yeah, so those are the things that I definitely wish people talked about more. And I love that we were able to cover that in this workshop on workshops in an hour. Like each thing could have been its own longer unpacked thing, but I think it was a really great framework for people to start to create their own frameworks and start to get their own inspiration and confidence to go out and teach wonderful classes.
Okay, well, I want to make sure we give the goods to the people listening. I know you mentioned you kind of gave a step-by-step framework during the workshop. Were there any steps that people found especially helpful or eye-opening, or even like you're like, you need to know this?
Well, I'm a little biased because so along with that, knowing the imposter syndrome and knowing that what's preventing a lot of teachers from actually doing a workshop, because it's one thing to go into a class and be like, I'm teaching a yoga class, and that's a time that you're in the class, simple, done. There's pressure, but kind of less pressure. And I think when people think about putting on a workshop, then they come into the frame of mind like, oh, again, that imposter syndrome. Oh, what do I even know? Do I know enough to teach this workshop? Are people going to think that I'm a good teacher? Am I allowed to do this? Am I an expert enough on this subject to even have a workshop? Right? I think a lot of teachers think workshops are a more advanced teaching thing. And yeah, please don't teach a workshop you're not comfortable about the subject. Like, by the time I think you're ready to put on a workshop. And so I'm biased because in my experience, I know most teachers are going to play it small. Most teachers are going to want to do a workshop and then talk themselves out of it because the fears overcome the not fears, their confidence. And so I really spent a lot of time at periods of the workshop because I love doing this anyways, but like cheerleading everybody. But also, like, the thing we need to remember is, why are we teaching yoga in the first place? It's usually because we want to help people. And if we let the imposter and all our fears take over to prevent us from teaching that workshop, well, then we're not helping anybody. We're making it all about ourselves, right? Like, I'm not good enough. And then whatever you have to offer isn't going to be out there for people to make an impact in the world. So that's kind of like I think the key thing, because then you're not even going to teach the workshop. And then this step-by-step playbook that we're helping you do in the workshop is pointless because you're listening to your fears and forgetting that yoga is about helping each other. Yoga is about offering this service. And why are we doing this in the first place? Is to teach and to show up and to make an impact. And we're not doing that when we're listening to our fears. So yeah, that's why I say it's my bias, because I'm like, get out of your own way, teach the workshop, make a difference.
It's interesting. One thing you said was that like teachers might feel imposter syndrome because a workshop for some reason has become this idea of extreme like knowledge depth, or like going deeper, or like having this big knowledge base, I guess. But some of my favorite workshops were not really like as a student, not as a teacher, but as a student, some of my favorite workshops were not about like anatomy, were not about like this like big knowledge base. It was like the excuse to go somewhere for 3 hours and like practice with the community. And it could have been just like a really great yin workshop where we get to be extra slow and we get to, basically take a nap. Like, these were the things that I truly loved as a student. And it's when you come from that perspective and you're talking about like how generous it is to like share your practice with other people, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be an expert in some super niche topic or do a workshop where it's like almost for other teachers. It's like, no, it's actually for people who just want to practice. It's a longer class.
Ula, that's such a good point. Exactly. It truly, and I think so, exactly that. It's a longer class and it's absolutely allowed to be like that. It doesn't have to be. And that's one of the things that I've noticed since the pandemic, actually. Previously, my history as both a teacher and a student was always doing these workshops I felt like so intensive. They'd be like a weekend workshop, Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And they'd be like intensives. Like we're like, okay, we're going to look at this pose and we're going to workshop that. And it's like great, both as the student and the teacher, but also super tiring and beautiful. One of the benefits of the pandemic is something switched in my brain as a teacher. And then I'm like, I don't want to teach this way anymore. I don't want to like have all that intensity. And so I've actually, no matter what I do, depending, changed my format. I do 10 to 4. We don't start at 9 to 5 or 8:30. It's 10 to 4, and we have and it's not workshop, intense learning the whole time. And it actually is just so spacious and revolutionary in a way, because up until that point, every other workshop I think I've ever attended in my yoga career and life were just those intensity experiences. So yeah, I think. And so it's interesting as a more experienced teacher that over the time I'm actually becoming less detailed, which you think would go the other way. Well, a super experienced teacher would be this, yeah, expertise where we're going to dive in. And even if the workshop is like that, it's still not as intense as it used to be. There's value in like everybody's nervous system absorbing the information in ways that are like functional and sustainable than like a fire hose of like, here, take it all in.
It's funny. It's what pops up to me is like I have experience in event planning, and it's two things: event planning and also writing. I think it's natural for us to want to like overfill things, and one of our best friends should really be the delete button. Like you are probably better served to remove something. You don't need to do everything all at once. Like too many topics, too many, all these things. Like people need, like you said, time to absorb, and they don't need a fire hose of information. And maybe you'd be better suited to host a series of workshops where people get to really, digest and enjoy this topic and really get into it. Um, this kind of helps me. Next thing on top of my mind is aligned marketing. I think you went over that as well. And what does it actually look like to, have aligned marketing when you're a practicing yoga teacher?
Yeah, it always comes down for me again, who, what, where, why. It's like, who am I teaching? Where are they? What are they? Like, not what are they, but like, what are they wanting? Why am I doing this workshop? Who's it for? And then it's just, yeah, I think in a bunch of our previous, I think that who, what, why comes in a lot of different things in our previous podcast. So, hey, everybody, if you haven't listened to our previous episodes, go binge them. They are so full of good, deep, insightful things for you, especially around marketing. So I'm not going to go too much into that. But it's getting out of the box. One of the things I said in this workshop, and we actually had some good, fun ideas. I love how in the midst of teaching too, like things that I haven't thought about come out of my head in the moment of teaching, if that makes sense. So it's like, there's a couple great ideas that I was like, oh yeah, that was nice. Okay, that popped out and was helpful for people. Can I remember it right now? No. So I guess you'll have to watch the replay if you want to see whatever that helpful things is. Really mostly my point of that is like really it's the out of the box things. You don't have to do a workshop in a yoga studio. You can do a workshop in different places, and there's different types of workshops. So I think when you really get out of the box and feel bold enough to do something that's not super obvious or super uh, what everybody else is doing is actually where we win on a lot of levels in life. But it's just don't often think that your workshop has to be at a yoga studio and it has to be just for yoga practitioners. Sometimes it could be a workshop for local healthcare practitioners that you want to get in with a little bit so that they refer you to your classes, especially if you have a niche or specialty around like therapeutic yoga or yoga for low back pain, right? So yeah, you could do a workshop directly to people with low back pain, or you could do a workshop, an info workshop for free for healthcare practitioners that work with people with low back pain so that you become the one they refer. So it's like a marketing workshop. So this is kind of what we dove more into in the workshop about getting out of the obvious ways to do it and more of the creative ways that actually could be super beneficial for you.
Yeah, I hear this like theme repeating with what you're saying. It's like if you have this idea of what workshop is in a yoga studio, it is this length of time. It is with it. It's like that's actually not true. Like you could get super creative with it. Which begs the question, like, what do you hope teachers take away from this, and they like just the thing they should apply to their next workshop?
Well, again, just trust that your workshop is helping people and get out of your own way. So, like, number one, get out of your own way, trust yourself, trust the yoga, trust what you're going to share. And then have fun with it. It doesn't have to be this serious, like, I am now doing a workshop and I have to be somebody other than, like, it's always going back to what I always say is like professionally unprofessional. Like, be professional, show up, know what you're doing, be professional, but don't be so professional that you're no longer you. So when I say professionally unprofessional, the unprofessional part is you being human, if this makes sense. Like, so maybe the word unprofessional might be kind of sticky for some people, so maybe that's not the best kind of word, but meaning like I'm, my version of that would be if I was professional, I'd be like, hello everybody, I am Brie, and notice how my voice changes, and I am an expert and I am your teacher for these next 3 hours, and this is like boring. I don't want, I mean, hey, if that's you and you want to be professional, awesome. But I find the really effective workshops are the ones where we are holding space. We know what we're doing. We have a plan. We've thought about it. We've crafted it, right? We've put the professional effort into the workshop itself. We teach in a professional way and include ourselves, include our humanity, include talking in your normal voice and having that, again, like that, yes, I am like separate from you, right? Like I'm that teacher who I am this expert. Like, in my opinion, that's just boring. And who wants that? So, yeah, if you can, there's my takeaway.
I was thinking the word, which is like so overused right now, but also true, is people are looking for authenticity. And it's just like being your authentic self. And you can be authentic while being professional. So you can be prepared, but yourself as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's popped up in my mind. But okay, we're going to share the replay, right? So I'm going to include a description. I know you kind of glossed over it. So I want to mention it now and I'll mention it at the end. If you're like, I want more info, we are going to include that in the description so people can watch the workshop themselves, which leads me to the next thing, which is you're already planning the next live workshop on inclusive teaching. We've done a podcast recently on that as well. So if you're kind of curious what that even means, we already have a live podcast for that. And I am going to include a link to in their description for that. Can you tell me a little bit why you really wanted to do this live workshop on inclusive teaching? Like, what's the, I'm going to edit that part out.
What's the genesis of why? Why inclusive teaching?
Maybe I won't
Yeah.
edit it.
Yeah.
Speaking of authenticity, I got
Yes,
lost in my own
exactly.
question.
No, I got you. We're in this to, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to ask like why you think we also need a live workshop on this, because like people could just watch the podcast, listen. People could listen to the podcast, but you think it's important to do
Yeah.
this, right?
Okay, so a couple things on that. So like, please go back and listen to that one because it was like how to teach inclusive classes, I think was the title. It's one of my favorite ones we've ever put out. So, although I love them all and they're great and we're fun and hopefully we're helpful, but that one is especially helpful for a bunch of reasons because number one, historically, again, I've been practicing yoga since like 1998. And I've seen in back in my day, like I've seen a lot of yoga change over the years, but what has been pretty common is how not inclusive yoga has been and still is in a lot of spaces. So just more than ever, we need to be inclusive. But then here's the tricky part and why the workshop will be helpful and listening to the podcast is like, I think a lot of people hear, yeah, inclusive, accessible, but it's got a lot of different meanings and you get it, but you're like, okay, but actually, how do I do that? What does that actually look like? And we talk a lot about how that looks like in the podcast. But in this workshop, there's also something really powerful about learning together in the moment, even if you're watching the replay, because it's all filmed live, it feels like you're watching it live. And so in that ability to ask questions, but also, so yeah, Ula and I talked great and we talked good in the previous podcast about the inclusive classes. But one of the things when we're in a workshop scenario, this is the other reason why I love workshops, is because that interaction, and it's not just people asking me questions as if I'm the be all and end all know it all of this, because I'm not and never will be, nobody is. But what gets enhanced is when somebody not only asks a question, or they're sharing their experience. They're sharing an insight that I didn't think about, or that says what I just said, but they say it way better, right? So it's this collective experience, which is also to me a way of embodying one of the ways that we can embody inclusivity is that we can grow together and go and learn from each other. It's like one of my favorite sayings is singly, like, I may know a lot or I may know some, but together we know a lot. And so that ability to, yeah, when you attend it live or watch the replay, having that collective group experience of learning from each other is so powerful. And yeah, so come do it.
We're going to end it there. And I just want to thank everyone for tuning in. This conversation, if it sparked any ideas or kind of gave you the permission to approach things differently, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. You can also comment on this below. And as promised, you'll find the links in the description to sign up for the next live workshop on inclusive yoga classes. I'm going to also include details about our 200 and 300 hour teacher training, which is now open for fall enrollment. And always, I'm going to include a coupon code in our description if you just want to pop into our online yoga studio. Brea already has a bunch of classes where you can learn from her directly, or if you just want to take a class and see, what our approach is, it's all there.
And our other awesome, amazing teachers who teach in their own beautiful, inclusive way in Heart and Bones Online. Yeah, it's worth it. You get a lot. And in fact, it's kind of interesting with Heart and Bones Online. Like, I think from what we understand with our members, almost half of them are all yoga teachers. So though it's for everyday people, yoga teachers get a lot out of it, not just for their practice, but also to get ideas for their classes and just kind of see what we're talking about, but in your own body. So I wanted to throw that extra bit in.
Okay, thank you, Brea.
Thank you.